Just start that. So yeah, thanks very much everyone for coming. So if you don't know me, I'm Dr. James Malone, and my co-host, sound like a game show, is Neil Goodwin from our external relations team. So I guess the reason for this sort of session we put on is around some of the recent work that I've been doing with Neil in terms of, I guess, promoting research through the media. So as part of that, really, we were sort of discussing a few things and kind of led to a conversation where we thought, well, actually, this would be quite useful in terms of some of the things Neil's shown me for the wider audience at the university as well. So yeah, that's where we've ended up here, basically. So what we've got lined up is I'm just going to quickly open with a few slides to show a case study from the health sciences team, showing how we actually maximise that link between the academics and the external relations team. Then I'll hand over to Neil, and he's going to give, I guess, a few pointers and tips and advice around how best to link in with the team in order to get our research promoted. Okay. So I'm just going to share my screen. So I'm a Liverpool fan, can't you? Okay, so this is just, as I say, just a brief overview of a case study that we had recently with one of our sports science students, Jake Ashton. So the case study revolved around heading in football in terms of our research that we've done in this area. So Jake was actually a third-year student last year doing his BSc in sports science. He's now stayed on to complete an MPhil with myself as well, so he's still an existing student. But basically, this study was his third-year undergrad dissertation project. So there's myself, Dr. Ginny Coyles, and also Dr. James Roberts, who's now at John Moores. And essentially, Jake wanted to look at the effects of heading on brain cognitive function. So the good thing at the time with this piece was that there was quite a big study done in Glasgow, which found potential link between footballers who had retired, who were then in the sort of 60s, 70s, between sort of their years of heading the ball and the link with dementia that they experienced in later life. So I guess by a bit of luck and intuition, Jake carried out this study around about the time that that larger study in Glasgow was published. So the difference with his study was essentially he wanted to do it on young people, because a lot of the studies in this area were previously done on older populations, as I say. I'm not going to bore you with the science, but basically we found that there was bad things happening. Okay, so a couple of examples here where we've got an increase in time for this King-Devitt test, which is a test for concussion, a sideline pitch test, and also some cognitive basic tests as well, which found that by heading the ball, it actually resulted in worse cognitive function. And this was essentially just 20 headers thrown up to a young, healthy student compared to a control group. So overall, there was quite surprising findings, quite interesting. And like I said, at that time, there was a few media outlets that were looking for bits of evidence to kind of support this notion of that heading is bad for football. So this is when Jake was a third-year student. So he was approached by several media outlets through the likes of Neil and his team. This then led to a few sort of more local outlets in the media. So the Liverpool Echo, who we've got good links with, and he also did an interview on BBC Radio Merseyside as well, just sharing his findings. So the key part is that none of the data was published at this point. And like I say, it was just a third-year student project, which normally we're not too bothered about in terms of things like this, but due to the novelty of the fans, it was quite interesting. We then went on to publish this not too long ago, actually, through good old peer review, which takes forever. So this was published only a couple of months ago. And then since then, there's been a lot more media interest around this negative thought around heading in football. So luckily, again, for us in a way, when this study was published officially, there was a real cry in the media for this sort of stuff. So again, through Neil and his team really helping to give us those contacts and put us in touch with the right people, you know, Jake this time around, the second time, was able to get much wider impact. So some snippets there on the screen, you can see quite a few of the national papers like The Guardian, The Telegraph, you know, Daily Mail, as good as you may think that is or not. And then we've also got, you know, obviously The Standard as well. But then he also carried out a couple of radio interviews again with BBC Radio Merseyside, and a bit more of a national one, which was on a talk sport debate program, which is, you know, listened to by quite a lot of people. So it really showed to me that, you know, for what we thought was quite a small study initially, which turned to quite a novel thing, through linking with Neil and his team, we're able to really get that message out. And I think, speaking to particularly James Roberts, we were a bit wary because I can see some of those titles and headlines on the papers are quite, you know, quite prominent and startling, and actually probably a bit too strong for what our findings were. You know, it was only a relatively small scale study that we did. So I think it is, as Neil will come on to, it is hard to balance between having too strong a conclusion for the media and kind of keeping our integrity as researchers. But the good thing from this, just the final point really, was that through the media and through the publication, not directly just our work, but others as well, the FA actually have brought out guidance in terms of heading for younger grassroots level. So we've actually now brought in these restrictions in terms of heading guidelines. And this has led to recently, with myself, James Roberts and a few others, about discussions with the FA around funded research. So this lady here, Dr. Charlotte Coey, who's head of medicine for the FA. So, you know, from all of this process, which is over the case of about 18 months or so, able to initiate those conversations recently where next year potentially that could lead to funded research, which would be fantastic. So I just wanted to share that really just as a bit of a, I guess, a case study example of how it could be used for its potential. I'll pass on to Neil, my better looking co-host, who's going to elaborate a bit further.
Yeah, hi everybody. James, have you seen Peppy? Yeah, she's in.
Yeah, there she is.
I'm glad Peppy's in because I'm going to use Peppy as a case study. So she probably hasn't heard that either, so it'll be a nice surprise. So yeah, I've got a little presentation similar to James, which I will share with you, hopefully. So yeah, I just wanted to talk to you briefly just about my background and how I kind of came into all of this. So I began life as a trainee reporter in Leeds and in Liverpool. I worked for 2 different press agencies, and I'm not sure if you know how they operate, but they essentially they work in a local patch, but instead of just giving stories to the local media, we also supplied the national media as well. So on any given day, I would be on a story for the Daily Star. The next day, I might be working for the Guardian. The day after that, I might be working for the Telegraph. And I think through that very broad kind of range of publications that I was working for, taught me to write in different styles and taught me to, well, it gave me good contacts with a sort of wide range of the media, which I think acted as a really good kind of bedrock. It was tough, really competitive, hence the title of this slide. It was very much a case of, yeah, if you don't get the story, don't come back. But that's, I guess, the way that the media works, and that hasn't really changed in the 20 years that I've been working in it. I was also lucky enough to do a bit of football reporting. So I was often on commission for the Belfast Telegraph, covering Everton and Liverpool games when I was based in Liverpool. So saw the mighty Anfield and the mighty Goodison. Can say the catering is much better at Anfield than it is at Goodison, but again, that might have changed since I was last there. I went on to work in public relations at an agency in Manchester, and again, that very kind of journalism and PR kind of experience is translated into this role here at Hope. So it's very much a case of me not just writing the stories, but finding the homes for them in the media in order to enhance the reputation of the university. And that's the aim of the game, really. Again, this is just some of the other bits and pieces that I was involved with in my life as a PR consultant. And you thought you might find it interesting just because of there were lots of things that could be thrown at us, and I guess could be thrown at the university as well. So one of the clients I worked for was hacked by in a cyber terrorism case. So there was a lot of crisis communications involved with that. So again, if you've ever got an issue, you find out a student is perhaps not behaving properly, or is perhaps being arrested, or there is some kind of problem, please come to me and or somebody else in the team, and we can sort of help you with those initial crisis comms. We've had these in recent weeks where a student's perhaps fallen poorly with COVID, and this university has certain worries about that story being sort of told in the press. So those kinds of things. Also work with a lot of kind of more academic clients. So again, surgeons, plastic surgeons, laser eye surgeons. So quite used to sort of sifting through research before I came to the university. And a lot of what we did at the agency was also kind of celebrity handling as well. So I had the fortune or misfortune to do quite a big sort of month-long project with Charlie Sheen, who was quite difficult to corral. So again, if I can handle Charlie Sheen, then I think I can handle kind of any tricky students or tricky academics. So again, please just sort of darken my door with anything that you have. So I guess more and more importantly for us is to say that there are lots of different ways to tell a story. So while we'll send traditional press releases, we also look to find other ways to communicate the message. So we might instead write a first person kind of blog piece. So again, to give you an example, I've been working with Dr. Erin Pritchard in disability studies, and she was quite passionate about panto and disability representations in panto. So we've worked on a first person story which we placed with the Metro. So again, we haven't sent it wide, we've very much tailored it for a specific publication, and we've written and presented and got the commission and done it that way. So I guess it's just important to bear that in mind when you're thinking about your own story, that there probably is lots of different ways to tell it, and it's about finding the right kind of method. I guess it's also important to say that it's not a precise science, and we are at the whims of kind of ever-changing news cycles and other events that might take over. So I guess it's to say that while I'll always endeavour to get you the best possible coverage that I can, oftentimes we might need to try several approaches in order to make something work, because we might choose to send it on a morning where Boris Johnson gives a press conference and the news is blitzed with something else. So I guess just something to bear in mind, really. I think this is really important, because a lot of people might have kind of trepidation in terms of sort of working with the media and working on a story, and that's completely understandable. To try and sort of minimize any kind of fears, you will speak to me, I'll work on some words, or we'll work on some words together, and then it will always go back to you for approval and amendment and edits. And as James will tell you, this, we can go back and forth 5, 6, 7 times until everyone's happy with it, and that's not a problem at all. And then it goes above me to Penny for final sign off, and then we look to send. Also, don't be put off if your research project is in conjunction with another university. So again, I'll show you some examples shortly, but I've done this very, very recently with University of York, University of Southampton. So basically, I pen the piece, I go to their press office and just get them to approve the messaging. And it's normally very sort of amicable, and they're happy for us to share the message. So again, don't be put off by that. So yeah, once everyone is happy with it and we look to send, there are again different ways to send. So more often than not, and at the moment, a lot of the contacts that I have in the media are always looking for exclusives. So if I think a story is worth the exclusive, I'll always try and place it as one, because then we can get in the preferred publication, and then we give them 24 hours to have the exclusive, and then we're free to send widely elsewhere. And we often do that through a system that we have at the university called Agility, which is a PR system that it's an automatic kind of list making and press release sending kind of way of sending things out. So I can basically use a database, find the contacts that I need, and then blitz to all the people who I think are relevant, and then we can generate as many hits as we can. And then obviously after that fact, we also push through our own news channels and social media, and something else that we're trying to sort of do a little bit more of is the podcasting side of things. We've got the Humans of Hope podcast, and that's obviously a really good way to go on there, talk informally, and just again talk about the research that you've been doing. Yeah, I guess this is the real crux of it, really. This is what is going to engage with people. So in its very pure distilled form, what are you trying to say? What is the story? And really that story should be able to be told in one sentence in the opening of the article. A good example again, which I'll come to, one of the guys in mathematics worked on this really complex system of drones in order to create a high altitude platform to supply internet. And it's a very kind of heavy study, and a lot of maths in there. But really what the goal of this was to give the internet to rural places in the world that don't have access to it. And it's really important for disaster planning and sort of pandemic planning. And it's this idea of how will your research really impact people? Why does the man on the street need to know about this? And that, I think that counts even if you're targeting more specialized media. It still needs to be distilled into this is important and this is why. So again, it's just important to have those ideas in your head when you're talking about the research, I think. And I can obviously help to distill that for you. So some examples sort of just from the last sort of 12 months, 11 months. This was a piece the guys in nutrition did, bit of research that was published into alternatives to sugar that could help reduce diabetes, picked up by sort of lots of different publications. Again, this was another sort of research study published about how weightlifting could help improve mobility in later life. So there was an initial study into weightlifting which got a bit of traction, and this was a kind of secondary research piece. And even, I guess, even if you think that it's maybe, as James was saying, a small group, maybe not as newsworthy, you'll always find something interesting in it. And coverage like this shows it really. This was a great piece of research by Dr. Jim Stack in early childhood at Hope. So he'd done this great bit of research into sort of the sharing behaviours in children. And again, I'm not sure if you're there, Jim, but I think I should say all of these initial stories, these were pieces of research that I'd spotted in the Hope repository. And then I'd made contact with the academic to say, would you mind if I took a look at this research? Because I think it's really interesting. And I think when I approached Jim initially, he was kind of saying, well, are you sure it's interesting? I don't really think, well, if you think that some people might like it. But as you can see, it made a really great piece in the Times, and there was other sort of pickup elsewhere. And it was just a really, really interesting story because it impacted directly on families and kids, and the newspapers love that sort of thing. So yeah, this was some more research from Dr. Emma Katz in psychology, I believe. So she'd done lots of research and been working with sort of various government groups on coercive control and domestic abuse. So these were important messages to get out. This was the high altitude platform that I mentioned earlier from Anicho in mathematics. Again, wonderful bit of technology. I know it's something that they're still working on at the moment. And there are loads and loads of kind of Internet of Things type media publications who loved this story, and it went really far and wide. Another one, Dr. John Tilson. This was a good example of cross-pollination between universities. So it was a study in conjunction with the University of York. So again, we worked with those guys. We got approval from the press office, and we issued a joint press release. And it again, I think it appeared on, I think, every single regional Reach title. So My London and Cheshire Live, just being two examples. I think it hit 30, 40 different titles. And again, this one that I loved, it was essentially artificial intelligence in order to revolutionize the way that we recycle. Again, it was one that I'd spotted in the research repository and contacted Emanuela, and this would generated lots and lots and lots of interest. And what I was going to say with this one is that we were approached by the One Show on the back of it, and they really wanted to run a piece. Where we fell slightly short was that we didn't have any video, and they really wanted video and some more pictures. So I guess and I realise this is difficult and a big ask, but if you can spot the opportunity for video and for decent photography, then either tip me off and we can sort it out for you, or just kind of bear it in mind as you go through and maybe look to get your own video. Because more and more often at the moment, we're asked for video content, which is, again, something that I can work with you on. Yeah, this was another one that was a study by us and the University of Southampton. So I interviewed academics from the University of Southampton as well as Dr. Julie Hadwin. And again, we issued this as a kind of joint press release, and it went really well. Got loads of pickup, Guardian, The Eye. There was a few others. I think it was in the Telegraph as well. It generated print coverage as well, which is obviously really valuable. So yeah, away from your sort of common garden research, also come to me with any books or book chapters. And I should also say here, events. So if you're holding a sort of symposium on a given topic, give me a shout, let me know. I'll either sit in on it and take notes and maybe work on a story from it, or I can help to publicize it. So this particular example here is Dr. Bryce Evans in history. He just released a book about the history of the American airline Pan Am, and he essentially interviewed lots of different flight attendants, and they gave their story about kind of life on board, and it again generated loads and loads of headlines, Tatler being one of them, and it was in Forbes and the Mail and lots of other places. And again, really pleased with this one here on the bottom right hand side, because we got a direct link to Hope, which again, something that we always try and get, these sort of backlinks back to the university. So this one is slightly different, and I guess it's me saying that a new story doesn't have to be predicated on either research or a book or any work. It can just be your opinion. It can just be an idea that you've got, or it can be me darkening your door and saying, I've got an idea for a story, would you mind helping me with it? And we can then use this as a way to publicize any other research or any other work that the school is going through. So to give you an example here, this was an interview that I did with Monica Grady, the sort of our honorary chancellor, and again went so far and wide. It was reported all over, and it still gets picked up now. And again, it was just based on a chat that we had, and she was talking about this, and it wasn't instigated by any sort of academic research. It was just her expressing something that was important to her. Similar story with this. This was Dr. Zoe Nikiforidou in early childhood. So I'd found out that Zoe had a particular expertise in kind of cotton wool kids and looking after children. So I approached Zoe and said, we need to talk about coronavirus and what that means for children. And she was gracious enough to work with me on 3 or 4 different pieces, all of which were picked up really, really well. And again, not based on any sort of current new research. It was just, you're good at this. This is your specialist area. Let's work on this and work on a news piece to capitalize on it. Again, similar story here. This is another opinion piece by Dr. Jen Huff about how we sort of keep the lid on the potential for riots in the wake of coronavirus. The other one was Bryce talking about food rationing in the wake of coronavirus. So again, not based on research, not based on sort of anything current, just I've got this idea for a story, let's work on something. And this was a nice piece. This was something I did with Vicky Joyce, one of your colleagues, Denise, I think. So we talked about ways that you could avoid injuries in cycling. And the only reason we did this was because I'd spoken with Joyce about something else. Joyce had mentioned, everyone's taking up cycling at the moment. They need to be careful in terms of what they do. So we, just based on that conversation, we worked on this. And then she also got a column in Cycling Weekly, which you can see on the right-hand side, which was amazing. And she got to sort of answer a load of readers' questions on the back of it. So I guess, again, open door policy, any idea at all that you think, I'd quite like to talk about this, then just drop me a line. It doesn't need to be, I've got new research or I've got a new book. And we can just sort of throw ideas around and work on pieces together. Wanted to talk about student stories as well. So the first type of student story is this. So this is just an amazing student at Hope that we found. So a chap called Jordan Hadaway's, I think he's primary school, but he also happens to be the youngest football manager in, we think, the UK, but a lot of people said the world. And this was picked up sort of hugely all over the world. He was doing international interviews, sat in my office talking to people in America, and it was also shared really well on social media, which is brilliant. And we got the Echo to go out and do some footage of him taking one of his training sessions and all the rest of it. So I guess if you hear of any brilliant students who might be doing something slightly different, then just tip me off, and obviously have a word with them first. But it was quite surprising that, again, he didn't think it was a story. He was like, I can't believe anybody's interested, but you can see that people are, because it's such an interesting story. And I think the more you talk to people, the more that you realize that there's probably loads of these stories hidden in the university that I just need to find. So if you ever come across anything like this, please let me know. And it doesn't need to be as dramatic as this. It can be something, but we've had people who have been volunteering, making PPE, or have been doing something great in the local community. All those things, they're great for me. The other type of student story is students who are doing something academically. So I guess in a similar way to what Jake was doing, in that he was, not a fully fledged doctor at the university, he was a student doing some research. So we had some master students in history who had done the dissertation on witchcraft. So again, I found these guys in the run up to Halloween and did some great interviews. And again, this was picked up so widely. We did a Welsh version and we did an English version. The English version went to every regional title, and the Welsh version was in sort of the Daily Post and Wales Online. And what's interesting about this is that it's this idea of sort of local stories, local history. There's a huge appetite for them, and this story really proved it. So if there's anything ever that we can link to a certain locality, that's great for me. Something you probably aren't aware of is that I constantly monitor something called journo requests. And again, these come in through our agility sort of PR system. So essentially, I'm a reporter down in London working on a story about vaccinations. They'll just put a shout out through social media saying, I need somebody who's an expert on vaccines to talk to me about a story. And then you get a big pile in of people saying, I've got an academic. So what you'll often find is me darkening your door with these requests as well. And again, if you feel like you've got the expertise to help me, then I can sort of work with you and get a piece going. Peppy, who I think is in here, she's the master of this. So Peppy brilliantly made herself available to me for an initial story for the Metro regarding coronavirus. And then for the next, what was it, Peppy, 3 or 4 months, they were coming to you pretty much every week for a quote on a story, which again is brilliant for me, brilliant for the university in terms of reputation, brilliant for the course, and brilliant that Peppy took the time to do this for me, because I realised that it was, quite a drain on the time, and but it generated loads of great pieces. And yeah, we sort of monitor these on a daily basis. Yeah, I guess some other things to consider, and just to note really. I've mentioned before the importance of images and video. Just again, keep that at the forefront of your mind even when you're doing research. Maybe sort of look to perhaps, I don't know, arrange some photography or talk to me about photography. James touched on this as well. When we send stories to the press, we can't stipulate headlines. We can suggest, and we can often sort of email them back and say, look, you've got this wrong, please amend. But it's generally up to their sub-editors to write the headlines in order to fit in with their house style. So I'd just say that if you're uncomfortable with a headline that they've used and that we haven't supplied, then just let me know. I'll email the journalist and we'll try and get it amended. Normally it's fine. And we can also be selective in terms of who we target. So we never actively send anything to the Sun, just because of who we are and where we are. There is, however, nothing to stop them basically stealing a story from the Mail and running it if it's a story without pictures. So again, it's just something to bear in mind. It's only happened once since I've been here. The Sun naughtily picked it up and used it. We hadn't sent it to them. But again, if it happens, drop me a line. I can try and get it taken down. Yeah, the other thing is perhaps the need for media training. Excuse me. So when we work with Jake Ashton, who James was talking about earlier, he was very rusty in the first interview that he did, which is completely understandable because he's never done this before, and he was kind of thrust in front of a TalkSport microphone. But I worked with him and we sort of practiced answering questions, and the more that he did these things, the more comfortable he was doing them. And now he's a real dab hand at it. He's perfect. And I would say if a request comes in for an interview and you're not comfortable or you don't feel confident doing it, then again, I can help on that front. I've done it for some other people as well. So I can just talk you through, and, we can request the questions beforehand so that you have full sight of everything that's going to be answered. And we can try and predict any kind of questions that might throw you as well. And yeah, I guess finally, these are my contact details. So either one of those emails, and don't be afraid to blast an email over at night or at weekends. I'll always pick these things up, and I realise that you might have an idea at the weekend that you might forget by Monday. So just fire it through. And I think that's it really. I guess it's just a case of saying that it's very much an open door policy. If you've got absolutely anything at all that you think might work, then just let me know, and I'll find a way to make it work. So yeah, thank you for that. Thank you for bearing with me.
Cheers, Neil. Thanks very much for that. Hopefully everyone's found that useful, picked up a few pointers. I certainly have as well. I guess we've got a bit of time now for any questions for Neil. If anyone wants to ask any questions. It's like students.
Peppy's terrified I'm going to ask her to do another story. I'm not, by the way.
Give me an example of a TikTok.
Yeah, so this is something that we are looking to launch in the new year, and it's something that we're quite excited about doing. So the first TikTok that we are doing is with Andy Folks in mathematics, who you may or may not know is a dab hand at the Rubik's Cube. So he's basically got the camera there, and he does the Rubik's Cube in about 15-20 seconds. And we're just going to, so that's one of the videos that we're working on at the moment. It's just those short 15-30 second long videos that we use to publicize a school or a course. In this case, there's a new master's course in mathematics, so we're going to use it as part of that. I guess the emphasis for us with TikTok is fun, lighthearted, away from the drudgery of, how people might feel at the moment. So we're going to get one of the robotic arms in the maths engineering lab to do sign language, or to do rock paper scissors, or it's just those kind of quirky little videos. A lot of the stuff as well, we can repackage footage that already exists, and just put our own titles on it, which a lot of the other universities are doing. I was at a conference a couple of days ago, and I was talking to somebody from the University of Cambridge, and they'd found a video of a turtle eating some plastic in the sea, and I don't even think it was their video. It was copyright free, and they used it on their TikTok and had like 2-3 million views just for something that was as simple as that to put together. So again, you might have some existing footage in your schools and departments that might work, and we can just chop it down and edit it for you. So yeah, like we're going to be sort of working much closer with people on TikTok. We're still in a working group at the moment to decide certain themes and sort of overarching directions, but yeah, you can expect to see that in January. I must admit, I wasn't an expert until a few days ago.
I think Lorna's volunteering for a dance version there, I think, Neil, on TikTok.
That's what I was afraid of. Now I get it. But I it's how we understand it. It's really good. Thank you.
Cool. Well, you've been brilliant as well, Lorna. You've worked with me on loads of different pieces. I didn't include him in this, but Lorna's been great at working with me. So
Can't do the TikTok though. But I was thinking we'll get some kids against Andy Folks though.
That's a good shout. Yeah, very good shout. It'd take me about 3 weeks, and then I'd probably.
Neil, can I ask a question, please?
Sure.
Do you know anybody at the British Journalism Review?
No.
I'm just trying to find the name of the editor. I'm from the business school, by the way. Probably nobody here knows me. I only started at Hope back in September. But in my previous institution, I was the go-to person in business for the media. Radio, TV, quotes all the time. Yeah. And Radio Stoke phoned me up very, very unexpectedly last week, actually. I've never done anything for Radio Stoke, but they picked up an article about 50 billion, I'm sure it was 50 billion pounds worth of sterling that the Bank of England couldn't trace. And I mean, I didn't mention Hope because they wanted me to do it quite quickly. But they wanted that to be light-hearted. But I've got a piece that I want to send to the British Journalism Review.
Yeah.
But I'm minded also that the work that we've been doing in the business school this trimester is so relevant to what's happening linked to the pandemic, the impact on businesses. And if there aren't opportunities for the business school to be saying something to the local media, at the least, we're missing a trick, in my view.
Yeah, no, you're 100% right. I've been talking to Tony Bradley this afternoon, actually.
Right.
Yeah, he's just contributed to a piece that's going to be in a publication called Startup Geeks.
Great.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's definitely something that I need to be across. I think you guys in the business school.
Yeah.
I can try and find a contact for you for the British Journalism Review.
I would, yeah, I mean, I can probably come back to you in a minute. I'm on the wrong website because, of course, I'm multitasking here with two screens, aren't I? It was just really if you knew anybody, because I think he's well, I know he's been around a long time, the editor, and it would be because he writes some brilliant stuff. He really does.
Okay, I can. Yeah, we'll search our database and try and find some contacts for you.
Thanks.
Yeah, no worries.
Any other questions for Neil? Psychology or Denise from health science?
Can I ask something else?
Yeah.
What struck me when you were doing this, Neil, and I have really enjoyed working with you on the things we've done. So I just want to say that also. It's like you're telling our story. And I was also thinking about the business school there. So what do you think? You've been here, I don't know how long, a year, 2 years, I'm not sure.
I started in January, so I was only in the office for
right.
2 months, and then I was booted out.
So do you think that you could tell us back that story in some sort of way so that we get an understanding of what you've picked up? Because that could be really interesting to see what we're signalling as a group. I don't know if you've got an answer for that, but it was just struck me as we were reading it when you mentioned, emphasis on family, emphasis on, outstanding students and things like that, because it is about promoting the university, isn't it? Yeah,
I think what I would say more than anything, what I've noticed is that there is so much research that goes into the repository that maybe isn't signposted. And I'd spend a lot of time kind of going through that and trying to pick pieces up and working on them. But I'd love to be in a position where academics just sort of fire me an email to say, this research has just been published. Would you mind taking a look at it? Because chances are I will, and chances are there'll be something in it. And I guess Hope needs to be really proud of the research that's coming out, because it's so good and so varied and so interesting. I think maybe it just needs to be celebrated a bit more and sort of really relied upon to boost reputation, because it's such an asset. But yeah, and in terms of reporting back, again, it's something that I'm hoping to do more of in January in the new year, in terms of every month, here's some of the best coverage that we've had, to maybe highlight the really good cases. And again, as you say, to highlight the voices and the kind of overarching kind of messages that are coming out of certain skills. Because I think certain skills are more savvy to it, I think, than others. And it'd be nice to sort of have that on an equal keel, even across the departments.
Do you want to just follow up on that a little bit?
Sorry.
Okay. Can I just follow up on that bit?
Yeah, sure.
So, yeah, people are extremely modest.
Yeah, I think that's the problem. Yeah.
Yeah, you might say they're honest, right? But either way, people elsewhere tend to over-egg it a bit, and people, it's hard to get them to say what they've done sometimes, So I really recognise that point, and if we're trying to, one really helpful thing would be if you could put together something which we could use at open days, visit days, which is not intended to replace the presentation. It's just that when people are hanging around waiting for the dull and turgid talk which we're about to deliver, not just you, Lorna. I mean, we've all I'm a specialist at the dull and turgid talk, but the just running in the background is a kind of narrative that's building around the fact that you know, it's not a backwater. There are things going on, and why that matters is that, you know, if you spend time in a Russell Group university, and you go to an open day there, they tell you a tremendous amount about all this research, right? And frankly, it's not at all clear to me that it matters to the incoming students. Much more purchase is seeing that in the media in which they read or they're exposed to, you know. But we don't do it. We don't show it anywhere. We don't have screens around the place that communicate this very well. There's no internal narrative around it. It's kind of odd, actually.
Yeah.
And the other part to that, sorry, I'll say one other thing, then you can respond. I'm very conscious of the fact that as a sort of, you know, a man in my 50s, I literally have no idea what the landscape is that matters to, you know, the channels through which we should communicate to that audience. So, you know, every week Nicola sends out a message about, you know, anyone got anything to tweet? Well, you know, I don't know is the answer to that, and neither do I know if that's the right medium through which to communicate. But I'm wondering if you have if there's some way we can, without adding to workload, actually just use the material that's been generated to automatically communicate those stories, not just externally, but to our own students, to incoming students, for example.
Yeah, no, I completely take that point. And it's something that we've spoken about, the fact that kind of media coverage reporting isn't kind of really being done. I do it to the people who need to see it, but it doesn't tend to be kind of shared widely, really. I do it sporadically through the news sort of pages, but I think there needs to be some kind of regular tool. So at the end of January, you will see, you know, X and Y being reported in these publications, and as you say, yeah, you can use those through sort of open days, and I can help put those together if needs be. I'm more than happy to do that.
Well, I wonder if there's space for a kind of corporate present, you know, upmarket corporate presentation of its impact.
Yeah.
In the you know, in the real media.
Yeah. No, I think there definitely is, because there's no shortage of stories, and it obviously makes my life pretty easy in that respect. And it's just something, like you say, something to really celebrate and something to really make a big deal about, because it is such a research-led institution. So, yeah.
Cool. So just conscious of time, so we'll leave it there. But what I'll do is I'll make this video available for any colleagues who might have missed this talk, if you want to just let them know once that's available. And obviously, Neil's provided his details there if you want to have a chat to him offline as well to follow anything up. Okay. Well, thanks very much, everyone, for your time. Thanks very much to Neil as well.
Thank you to everyone that I've pestered over the past few months as well.
Cheers, everyone. Have a great Christmas if I don't see you.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Cheers. Bye. Bye.